Well, it's a logical thing to approach when you are on the leading edge of creation. And that is the reason that this conversation is of particular exciting interest to us. Because as we answer your question, and we will answer it fully, you've been chewing on it long enough, and you will hear the answer in a very satisfying way. But at the basis of this answer is something even more exciting that we're wanting to address with you. And so we're going to start there, since it is from that perspective that the question begins. When humans often look toward what is non-physical, they think of non-physical as a starting place or as a beginning of what is physical. In other words, I was non-physical and now I'm physical. That's logical. I came forth from that. And while all of that is true, the leading edgeness of that which you are is more important than most humans ever make it out to be. Most humans don't get it, that source is here doing this. That creation is about source displaying and expressing and being. So your inner being is only as inner as you don't let it out.
Right, makes sense.
Because it's source energy expressing, and it's expressing everywhere in everything. And while you're able to see where it's pinched off, or where it's not allowed, or where it's resisted to some degree, still all around you is this source energy. So when we talk about this inner being, it's almost like regressing into what was before this. And so in the beginning, as we began interacting with you through this format of Esther, we began talking to you about your inner being, because most people were so physically oriented. So what is oriented? And while they danced around the idea of God, or they danced around the idea of pre-birth or post-death sort of ideas, almost no one was really talking about the integration of the physical you and the whole of that which you are. It's a really rare person who lives in the moment, the fullness of all that they are. Creative people, and everyone is that, but who are creative in music or in writing or in art, they often tap into it and understand it a little more than most others, because they know what that feeling of flow is. Even athletes sometimes can get in what they call the zone, where so much more of them is focused and present and capable and doing amazing things than under normal circumstances, that they get glimpses of that allowance of the fullness of who they are. But when you, so we began talking about your inner being, because we wanted for a while for you to begin addressing that there was another part of you who is clearer and surer, and certainly understanding its value and worthiness, who is available to you. And in the process of that, in some ways, we sort of split you up even more than you were before, as we talk about the physical you and the inner you, when our intention all along is to help you to blend or integrate the two. But there cannot be a true integration unless there is an understanding of the perspectives of. And the perspective of you out here on the leading edge, it's just flat out the way it is. The perspective out here on the leading edge of what isness, out here dealing with the manifestations, seeing what's around you, that perspective is different. You just can't get around it from the different of the is different than the source within you, because the source within you always holds a steady focus on well-being, while in this contrasting sorting, just like you intended to do personality, you're not always quite there. So the idea of the inner being, the idea of approaching this other part of you as an inner being, evolved in order to help you to understand that there is more to you than you know. Right. And that it existed before you came into this personality. And then we began, in order to bridge you into a more clear understanding of how it all fits together, we began talking to you about the contrast causing you to launch the rockets, and the source within you to receive that rocket, so that we are helping you to understand your part in the expansion of your inner being. Now, that expansion of your inner being exists for your allowance of its now expansion to reflect into your experience. So now you're helping us to say something. We're taking a big step forward in this, speaking that which has never been before through this powerful question. So there is your inner being, that which you were before. You come forth into this experience. You explore. You know what you don't want. You send off these rockets of desire. Your inner being takes the expansion immediately and becomes it. And then you do the step 3 part of the process where you come into allowance with that which you have become. And then the manifestation is reflected. Now that's where we ended yesterday. And of course, some of you have been listening to us for a while and you get that. So now let's take what you're adding to this with your question further. So now this manifestation comes out. It comes out. In other words, the inner being reflects outwardly into the manifestation. So this process of becoming, you see, everything that you have been before, which is that which we were before you got here, is irrelevant now because we are so much more now that you've been here. So, and we wouldn't be that, yes. We wouldn't be that which we are if you hadn't been there, if you hadn't come into this physical experience. In other words, you are causing the expansion of that which is us. You see, the whole hang-up of physical beings is you can't stop that process because that's just the way that it is. You have been causing the expansion of Source eternally, and Source keeps being reflected in these new babies that are being born. But what this conversation is about is you being a body of conscious people who are understanding where you have come from and what you're contributing to the whole of it. And now you are in a place where you can let what is inner be outer. It's time to let manifestations be reflected from the whole of that which you are, you see. Because a lot of creation happens because mankind knows what he does not want. What about a time of awakening when mankind, or a part of mankind, knows what he does want, knows what he does want? Do you feel the power of that which you are coming to? To be in this physical body, integrated with your inner being, but you're looking at your inner being not as a savior and not as something that knows more than you, but that is a holder of the energy and a reflector of a capturer of the energy that you are stirring up, and a ready contributor to whatever point of focus you decide you want to turn your attention to. We have said for years, you can be or do or have anything that you choose, but you have not heard it as clearly as you are hearing it right now, as you realize that you are the inner and the outer and the inner and the outer and the inner and the outer and the inner and the outer, and when it's blended you feel wonderful, and when it's not you don't feel so good. In other words, it's much simpler. Little ones are born knowing it, and they try to help you remember it. But you try to help them forget it while they try to help you remember it. And as adults say, life isn't, this whole universe is not orchestrated to make you happy. And we're in the background saying, yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. You have no idea how many resources are held in escrow, just in readiness for your vibrational participation with them, you see.
Excellent.
And so the inner being is the stable part of you when you are not. But the inner being never has intended to remain inner. The inner being wants to dance and reflect and play and laugh and create and co-create and manifest, you see.
Excellent.
Source manifests. That's why you're all here. That's what this physical time-space reality is about. In other words, don't you think if that which man called God was so happy in its ethereal, dangling feet over the edge of clouds experience, there's not any of that. In other words, where do you get that stuff? Where do you get that stuff? Can't you just feel the fullness of all that you are? Don't you see it reflected everywhere? And don't you just love knowing that you are the main event, that here you are the main event, that you were born, that energy is flowing, that you get to decide, that Source is there, and that everything that you have loved and revered about that which is non-physical is right here, present with you, laughing with you, playing with you, thinking with you, creating with you, living with you, expanding with you. Yes.
Excellent.
We like your question.